Welcome, YouTube family, and welcome to another edition of the Kevin Strong Show. And in this video, we're going to talk about the Seattle housing market, what's happening. Basically, what started as a very hot housing market is basically declining at an alarming rate. We're going to talk about that in detail and basically a little bit of information about the local economy as it applies to the housing market. Please feel free to extrapolate some of this information if you live in a major metropolitan city that's comparable to Seattle, that has a lot of technology-based companies that are planted there, like Austin, Texas, and certain cities in California. So once again, if you are enjoying this type of content, please do me the honor of smashing that like button. Please send a comment, like, and share because I care. Hope you like this color today. It looks pretty good. It's my Cherokee look, you know. True. Cherokee people. All right, but all jokes aside, yeah, I think my great whatever grandmother was 100% full-blooded Cherokee, and I guess she had some jungle fever, and the rest is history. All right, enough of the jokes. But if I made you laugh right now, if you think that's pretty funny, stop, pause for the cause, and hit that like button. So let's talk about the Seattle housing market. It was off to a rocket start for the last couple of years. Just historically, let's go back in time a little bit, folks. Back in around 2012, the Seattle housing market, just like a lot of other places in the country, had bottomed out. You know, that housing, the great financial crisis hit around 2008. And then housing prices in aggregate, there are some exceptions, in aggregate, went down for about a good 3 or 4 years. And they started to bottom out and then slowly started to lift up around 2012. That definitely was the case in the Seattle market. And ever since then, Seattle's housing market has been on a torrid pace. In aggregate, if you bought a house in the greater Seattle area in 2012, you would have probably experienced almost a 93% increase in appreciation. Full disclosure, I am a licensed real estate broker in the state of Washington for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I actually held a license long time ago in Ohio for about 10 years, from about 1990 to 2000. So collectively, my experience as a real estate agent and understanding the housing market as it applies to residential sales exceeds about 10 years. But currently, I've only been licensed in Washington since about November of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, so Seattle has basically seen a very strong housing market. The average price at the beginning of the year was a little bit around 840,000, 860 or something like that. It's around 756. So basically, with it, like in the last 6 months, the average home price in Seattle has gone down about 7%, almost $80,000 or $90,000 in just 6 months. What happens in markets like Seattle is that when interest rates go up exponentially like they've actually doubled since the beginning of this year. That has massive impact in a negative way on a high price housing area like Seattle, right? So when you're looking at houses at $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, and you're looking at a payment at 3.5%, and now you're looking at 7.5 or almost 8%. If you have a FICO score probably below 680, that is a payment shock. You might see a $1,200 to $1,500 increase in payment. And when you couple that payment shock with inflation, when it deals with food, energy, all of this stuff, right? It just eats away at people's buying power. It has such a negative effect. The wealth effect becomes a negative effect, and people just don't feel confident about making a long-term purchase. So before we go into a chart to kind of look at some of this stuff, I just want to talk about a couple big companies that have a major footprint in the Seattle area that are basically cutting back on their labor force. Microsoft has announced that they're going to lay off. I think the average salary at Microsoft with bonus is around 120. The medium is like 162, but obviously these engineers and things like that make $300,000 and $400,000 a year. But even if the people around, let's say 120 to 160 or around $200,000 lose their jobs by way of a layoff, that's a major impact because it's hard to replace that income. And just imagine the type of house that is connected to an income like that. Somebody might have a household income of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year, and most people live close to what they spend. So you got a $700,000, $800,000, $1 million house, then all of a sudden one of the incomes in the household gets cut in half. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to see how that can basically have a negative effect on that local housing market. Not to mention a lot of the builders in this area who started to build over 12 months ago when the rates were 3.5, now are pricing things at 7.5, close to 8%. So look for some builder concessions in the greater Seattle area. If you can afford to basically stay on the sideline, my recommendation is to do so because discounts are coming. Amazon basically has a scale back. I think in September, Boeing announced about 150 white collar jobs that they are going to basically cut from their workforce staff. And even Redfin, which is a national company, they're based out of Seattle. I think they announced around a 6% layoff. So these are some big companies in general. Metropolitan cities that are tech heavy don't do well in an inflationary and high interest rate environment. Those type of companies need the 10-year treasury to be low. They need debt to be low in order to thrive. And obviously that has an impact on their stock. So when something like Tesla is going up a lot, typically that's in concert with a deflationary or low interest rate environment. Conversely, when rates are going up the way they have been for the last couple months, go ahead and take a look at Tesla stock and you'll see basically a downward path. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the news. I'm going to go ahead and get into this chart. So here's a chart from Redfin that deals with pending sales, and it's color coded. So basically we're going to just look at the orange and the black. The orange was in 2021 and the black obviously was in 2022. I won't make any jokes, but let's go ahead and look at this. So in 2021, let's just say here in October 10th of 2021, there were pending home sales was 73,664. But if you go, let's see here, that was October 10th. And if we find October 10th here, look at that. 51,000 compared to 73,000. Big pullback, right? Big pullback. I think it was like 51%. So you can see this chart here. Once again, this is 2022, how we kind of had this high point and then we had an inflection around April. And ever since then, this is what they call a serious rollover. This is a channel for those who follow technical analysis, but it's basically heading down. And as rates continue to stay at their present levels or higher, this chart will continue to point out something very negative in terms of pending home sales as it applies to the greater Seattle area. So let's look at homes sold, right? These are homes that are sold. So once again, the orange is 2021 and the black is 2022. And as you can see here, let's get here. Here's October 10th again. And it was roughly about 96,000 homes that were sold in 2021. Let's go to 2022, and we have, I'm a day off, 21% less homes being sold. Once again, as you can see, the apex of the homes sold was probably around June, and ever since then, this chart has also been going down. And you're going to see a lot of homeowners who don't have a ton of equity feel like they're trapped because they're going to be like, hey, Kevin, I've got a ton of equity in my property, but I don't have enough to, let's say, upgrade, because if I sell my existing home, do I want to buy into an inflationary market where a 30-year fixed rate is at 7.5 or maybe 8%, or maybe some of those people, right, because of the COVID situation, have gotten in a situation where their credit has gone down a lot. So they could be potentially be looking at 8 or over 8% interest rates if they decide to buy a home. So that's why I think sometimes you cannot necessarily go with the old proverbial adage that you need 6 months of inventory in order for it to be a buyer's market. Rates, the wealth effect, inflation, these are all external factors that can have an impact on people's confidence level in terms of whether or not they feel strongly enough to basically make that long-term purchase. So I hope you guys got some value out of that. Once again, I'm going to kind of keep this video kind of short. So once again, this is really, really important stuff. Keep your head on a swivel. I'm coming up with some very creative things in 2023 for those people who are in the greater Seattle area that are looking to purchase houses using some creative financing that can literally get you in a house below 3.5%. I'm in the early stages of that. If that's something that you think you might be interested in, please reach out to me by way of email, and we can talk about how that would be set up. Once again, email would be kevin@strongjacob.com. So if you're enjoying this type of content, please do me the honor of smashing that like button, commenting and share, because I care, okay? And I'm going to end with this note. Keep your credit score up and your debt down. This was the Kevin Strong Show, and I'll see you guys. You know what? I forgot. There's one other thing that came to my mind. I just wanted to share with you. This is totally off topic, but just think about this. If you're ever a part of a group, or you're learning something, you ever hear something like the 80-20 rule in sales, where they say something like, hey, 20% of the sales force generates 80% of the business. And that's probably typical in real estate as well. If you're any type of self-help group, or you're trying to learn a new trade, please be honest with yourself in terms of where you're at. Here's an example. If you're attending a Zoom call, or let's say some training over the weekend, and this training costs, let's say $100, and there's 100 of you in this training, okay? And the person who you're learning from tells you, hey, I'm just letting you guys know only 5% of you guys are really going to implement this information. Take a step back and listen to what he's saying. 100 people has paid $100, but only 5%. The other 95 is not going to do squat with it. Are you that 5%? Right? If you're not, be honest with yourself. Know if you're meant to be self-employed. Know if you're meant to take risks. Don't stay on that proverbial treadmill and thinking that by participating, that's progress. Action is the only thing that results in progress. This was the Kevin Strong Show. I hope you enjoyed this content. Once again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, hit that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.